So, to start, in general we're talking about representation in media, specifically of transgender people, but in general, do you think representation is important?
Representation in media is so very important because it helps build self-image, especially like being a woman of color and not having that much representation, especially adding a layer of like my queerness with that. Being a queer woman of color, you don't really see other queer women of color represented in movies and TV shows until up until the past 3 or 4 years. In like the 80s and 90s, like queer women of color like Alice Walker and Audre Lorde built like the building blocks of like modern day intersectional feminism. And for us to not have that representation until modern day is just, it's a big fuck you to like the women and the people in general who built this movement up.
I think it's definitely really easy to like as an LGBT person forget or like not realize that there are other LGBT people around you and like that there have been other LGBT people throughout history, so that you feel less alone, and representation just provides that.
Yeah. I think it's really easy to forget other people in the community. Like if you have more rights, it's easy to think that everyone has the same amount of rights that you do. It's not fair for you to be like, well, I have this amount of respect and this kind of representation, so like I've made it. You have to look back and like we're all in this together.
I think the coolest thing that ever happened to me as a child was seeing Natalie Portman do an interview for a movie in Israel, and she spoke in Hebrew the whole time, and I knew exactly what she was saying. Like I was like 9, and it was the coolest thing that ever happened to me because I thought she was like me. Like Natalie Portman was my idol as a kid because I was like, wow, you know, she's born in Israel, she's an Israeli citizen, she's a Middle Eastern white mixed woman, Jewish, and she owned it, and it was the coolest thing. And like, I haven't had that feeling since I was 9 years old and saw that interview.
Right now there is you could call it an epidemic of trans violence. Trans people, specifically trans women of color, are dying at an alarming rate. There's an insane amount of hate crimes, and a lot of these trans people are also killing themselves because of the violence that they face. So why do you think something as simple but not so simple as representation, why do you think that can affect this?
Being an LGBT person can be such an isolating experience, and then you don't see yourself represented in media, so you're just like wondering where do I fit in the world, and like who am I, and is it okay to be who I am if I don't see anyone represented like me?
There's a movie coming out about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it's starring a non-Jewish woman, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg is Jewish, and I think that's a huge part of her identity. Is there a lack of Jewish actors?
It perpetuates this idea because people say a lot of the time, oh, like it's not about if the actor is cis or trans, it's just about who's most talented for the part. Well, that implies inherently that you just don't think transgender people are good enough to even tell their own stories.
It also implies that trans people are playing a role. So if a cis man plays a trans woman, then it implies that trans women are just cis men.
There are so many different things that plague trans women, especially trans women of color, because they're denied opportunities for jobs, they're denied opportunities for housing, opportunities for food, things that are basic human rights. They're denied constantly. Like the Salvation Army won't give housing to trans people and have killed several trans women inadvertently because these women go out and sleep in the night and they freeze to death or they're murdered. I was reading this article about how in Nazi Germany, Hitler had the institution that studied gender and sexuality destroyed, had all the records burned. That is what's happening now.
And I think when you perpetuate these stereotypes, and that's the representation that people see on television and see as the norm, that's what they accept as the norm for themselves, and that's how they view trans people. And then that just turns into the way that trans people are treated, and that directly goes into hand as to why we have all this violence. People see these stereotypes. For a lot of people, that's the only representation of trans people that they ever see. What can be done to change things?
Hollywood should obviously start giving more trans roles to trans people instead of cis people in costume.
But also hiring trans writers.
Yes.
There's so many fields, and every single one of them are just taken.
We need to hear actual stories from actual trans people.
Just listen to trans people. Cis people can't tell trans people what's transphobic, so it's just hear these people out. Let us tell you what we as a community need, and just actually take that into consideration.